Commando is one of the most badass 80s action movies ever made. It has all the elements and tropes that you'd expect to see. Massive guns, big muscles, Arnold, blood and violence. This movie is cheesy and full of iconic one-liners, but that's what makes it so good. It's relaxing and feels surprisingly fresh because it's not trying to tell some kind of deep story or impress you with original cinematography. There is almost non-stop action going on that never gets old or annoying. In fact, even once the movie is over, you still feel thirsty for more explosions and bullets to fly. Commando defines what 80s action was all about, and it does so in a perfect way. At the same time, despite being full of cliches and tropes, it also tries to subvert some of them and change expectations. When in other movies the hero has to rescue a kidnapped family member or loved one, they either do what the kidnappers tell them, try to find smart and sneaky ways to rescue them, or sacrifice themselves. They do what the villains tell them because the life of someone very important is at stake, and as viewers we often sympathize and hope the hero succeeds. This movie says fuck all of that and gives us some of the greatest and most badass action in history.
And if you want your kid back, then you gotta cooperate. Right?
Wrong.
John Matrix doesn't care about any of that. When his daughter gets kidnapped by a bunch of overly cartoony and cliché villains, instead of cooperating and doing what they say, he decides to turn into an indestructible killing machine and kill all of them without batting an eye. From the very beginning, where we see him carrying a giant tree log over his shoulder, we know that this is the baddest man on the planet. There is never a moment here where Arnold seems like he's ever in danger, and nor should he be. It seems like this movie is almost aware of all the tropes that were around in the 80s and makes a conscious decision to include as many as it can, while at the same time trying to be unexpected and subvert these same tropes. I believe that's why Commando works so well, because it doesn't take itself too seriously but also isn't trying to be a parody or completely without substance. This movie is iconic because of these factors and fun to watch. The action here is over the top and completely unapologetic. John Matrix doesn't care how much damage he does, he doesn't care how many people he has to kill or what happens in the process. He's basically a human version of the Terminator, not stopping before he has killed everyone involved in the kidnapping of his daughter. Matrix won't leave you threatening messages on your phone or try to bargain with you. The first time you see him will be the last time you see anything.
Feature film. Your flight attendants are Susan and Lance, and I'm Vic. We're here to make...
Do me a favor. Don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired.
Arnold really shines in this movie, and he's the main reason it ended up being so iconic. I don't think it would have been as successful without him, because his comedic timing and almost emotionless delivery of his lines is what makes the character really stand out. The acting in this movie isn't great, nor is the story in any way original or unheard of, but that's exactly why Commando is so good. Schwarzenegger has a certain charm and timing that other action stars, at least back in the 80s, lack. This movie was never supposed to be funny, but his delivery of one-liners is so iconic and good that he's rightfully called the king of one-liners.
Remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last?
That's right, Major. You did.
I lied.
What'd you do, Sully?
I let him go.
It's great to see a movie that knows exactly what it is and embraces this fact. A lot of modern action movies feel the need to also critique the violence and have some sort of message to them. And while that is not necessarily a bad thing and can have a positive result, it often ends up with certain movies or franchises taking themselves too seriously. Commando is different because you don't watch this movie to see a deep or well-acted story. You're here for the action and Arnold kicking some serious ass. Something Commando does extremely well, in part due to its fantastic pacing. It's fast-paced and never loses focus of the hero's goals or the story, but also knows when to slow down and give the viewer some room to breathe. That might sound obvious, but as cheesy and full of 80s tropes as this movie is, it's not something that is easily done, and I would consider it a special art form. John Matrix is never really in any serious danger. If anything, he's almost more intimidating than the actual villain, because nothing can stop him. The movie is also aware of this and even quotes the Terminator multiple times. With the cliche awful shooting skills of his enemies, you wouldn't even be surprised if some bullets hit Matrix and crumbled to dust. However, that's not to say that the main villain is not well done. Sure, he's the physical embodiment of every villain you can think of, but there is something menacing and crazy about him. He really does seem to believe that he's the only one that can stop John, and based on the insane look in his eyes and his Australian accent, the viewers can believe that too, or at least be curious about his abilities. The movie doesn't waste time on fleshing out the villains or any other character. John Matrix has about as much character development as a potato. And you know what? That's totally fine. You never feel the need to find out more about his personal life, because it would also take away from his mystery and indestructible persona. This movie is almost like the physical embodiment of the 80s. It has wild action, hilarious one-liners, cartoon villains, and nudity in the form of Arnold's half-naked body carrying trees and rocket launchers. It's a work of art and deserves its iconic status as one of the greatest action movies ever made. And I say this with a completely straight face. This movie was extremely influential within the genre, just like the Rambo movies, which were clear inspirations for Commando and started the whole 80s action half-naked lone wolf warrior trend. I think it's obvious that in a way Commando is almost like an unintentional parody of Rambo, because it's essentially the same archetype of character and both movies were released within 1 year of each other. Arnold was never a better actor than Stallone, but when it came to comedic timing and fast-paced movies, he seemed to have better luck. Personally, I believe Stallone won their feud due to him having superior acting and writing skills and his movies generally being better made and with more substance. However, Stallone lacked comedic timing, something that Schwarzenegger was excellent in.
This isn't a plane. This is a canoe with wings.
Well, then get in and start paddling.
Oh.
Come on, piece of shit. Die or die! Brooks, every time. Come stop.
His comedies beat that of Stallone by a mile, and while Commando is not a complete comedy, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good without Arnold's dry delivery. It might look easy or like nothing special, but comedic timing is extremely hard to do and a talent that you have to either be born with or invest thousands of hours into. The 80s had a lot of great A and B movie action, and this movie is one of them. It might genuinely be the greatest action movie of all time, as it doesn't annoy you with unnecessary story moments or character development. When John is not killing anyone, he's blowing up buildings with his rocket launcher and grenades, or he engages in glorious, shirtless knife fights with crazy Australians. This is the type of 80s cheesiness you expect and want to see, but it's also an iconic piece of art because it captures the essence of what action was all about back then. Audiences wanted to see a badass protagonist causing one explosion after the other. Commando always knew what kind of movie it wanted to be and never pretended otherwise. That's exactly why it's one of the most hardcore, badass action movies ever made and rightfully seen as iconic.
Leave anything for us? Just bodies.